our next guest is in the studio. Ambassador Michael Lotem is the Israeli ambassador to Kenya. He's been here before. He's back. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Okay. Reasonably okay.
Given the circumstances.
Given the circumstances, exactly.
Karibu sana. City sends his greetings. He's away. He's taken some days off. But he sends his greeting and says, tell Ambassador Lotem.
I hope he enjoys his
We hope
leave.
so too. You know, you never know with City. We always keep telling, just this time relax. This time take a break. This time make sure that it's leave for leave, right? So
I hope he took the leave in Israel to relax.
he'll tell us.
You never know. Again, you never know with City.
He will tell us. The proverbs for this week are from Libya. And the proverb for today, listen and tell us your interpretation of it. In the house of a man who has been hanged, don't talk of rope. In the house of a man who has been hanged, don't talk of rope.
Okay.
What do you think the proverb is saying? What do you think is the interpretation of this proverb?
The implication?
Interpretation.
Interpretation. Don't invite someone in a hunger strike area to eat. To eat in a steak. I mean, invite him to eat, but not in a luxury restaurant. Or don't tell him about your last meal, previous meal.
Don't gloat. Don't boast. You know, somebody who's hungry and then starts telling you, when I was having this juicy steak last night.
Yeah.
Be sensitive. Right. So,
Empathic.
Yes.
empathetic. That's true. Now, the Israel-Gaza Strip conflict, the Hamas militants into Israel, that left more than 1,000 people dead, that left destruction, people injured, maimed, and they took away people and they went with them. This has been going on for a long time. And even the world has had a conversation. The UN General Assembly took a vote the other day saying, please, Israel, it's about time that you stopped and halted this aggression. What exactly has been going on in Israel from the Israeli perspective?
I think what's going on, it's not only the Israeli perspective, it's a very objective perspective many see. Some don't want to admit what they see. That's politics. So, as you said very accurately, on October the 7th last year, with no provocation, Hamas terrorists invaded Israel. Now, to all those who don't know, and especially those who don't want to admit, especially Palestinian Authority officials, we were not in Gaza from 2005 at all, but from 1994 we are not in the Gaza main cities, Khan Yunis, Gaza, all the names that come to the to the headlines in the last year. So we are out of Gaza for almost 20 years, 19 years, but that was not an issue or a consideration for the Hamas, because the target is not, they tell you about Israeli occupation, but there was no occupation. They didn't even let the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. So I heard the Palestinian ambassador here a couple of weeks ago. When was the last time he visited Gaza? His bosses were thrown out from the roofs in 2006. So that's not the issue. That's not the issue in Lebanon. We withdrew from Lebanon to the international border recognized by the UN in 2000. So the issue is not where we are beyond our borders. The issue for all these terrorists, Iran-sponsored, is the very existence of Israel. They've been saying it, but we chose not to hear it.
Okay. So October 7th happened, and then the Israeli government decided to respond. And the response, as many have said, has been heavy-handed. There's been destruction. As you heard the ambassador of Palestine here last week, and he talked about the destruction and the amount of destruction that has happened in the Gaza Strip in terms of infrastructure destroyed, homes demolished, water infrastructure, power infrastructure, sanitation infrastructure, even hospitals have been bombed, universities and schools.
Hospitals were not bombed. Hospitals were not bombed. We still supply today water to the Gaza Strip. But it's upside down, the whole argument, if you don't mind, because that could have been stopped before we got into Gaza. On October the 8th, they could have said, we give you all the hostages that we took, give us this amount, we claim this amount of terrorist murderers that are in Israeli jails. They didn't do it on October the 8th. They didn't do it on December the 8th. They didn't do it in the last year, right? So it's in their hands. They could have stopped it. They can stop it in any given minute. The only thing that we see in the last few months is that an extension, this is what the Palestinian delegate forgot to say, to the West Bank. It's not the Palestinian Authority, it's not the Fatah people that are try to kill us in the West Bank. It's the Hamas that tried to take over from the Palestinian Authority in Jenin.
Balozi, let me get this clear. You're saying that there is an opportunity for this to cease if certain things are done. What's that?
In this very minute.
That it would stop right now.
Right now.
If 1, 2, 3 things happen, what are those?
Release of the kidnapped people, live and dead, and the removal of the Hamas terrorist leadership from Gaza. These are the aims of the war. And another aim that was added in the last week by the Israeli cabinet to enable to get to a ceasefire in the north, to enable 80,000 Israelis that were evacuated a year ago from the north to go back to their homes. Very simple.
Okay. What is the agreement about who is supposed to be an administrative authority in Gaza? I think it's important for us to go back to that. Who is supposed to be administrating, or who has been agreed that should be an administrative authority in Gaza today?
There was no agreement because there's no such discussion. The only thing that there's a consensus about it in Israel, it's not us.
So then how can we say it's not Israel? How can you say remove people from Gaza in order for us to cease fire if there's no consensus that it is not Israel who's supposed to be there? How then do you have a say over who should be there?
Are you suggesting we should be governing Gaza?
No, I'm saying how do you say that should be one of the demands for ceasefire if there's no consensus about who should be in an administrative authority over Gaza?
We don't have to negotiate or to bring all the Palestinian parties together. They should agree. There are 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Not all of them are Hamas. Most of them are Hamas supporters, but I guess there are other local leaders, and there were in the past, and also we see it coming up today slowly, too slow, but it's coming. Local leaders in Gaza that can take the place of the terrorists, can replace them, supported by the Palestinian Authority. Unfortunately, the first thing that the Palestinian Authority did is to embrace Hamas. Instead, if I'm a political representative or any diplomatic representative of the Palestinian Authority, on October the 7th, I will say, if you don't want this to happen in the West Bank, let's sit and strike a deal today. But no. They did.
When did the Palestinian Authority embrace Hamas?
When?
Yes.
Oh, in so many instances.
Name one.
On October the 7th, they were celebrating on the streets of Ramallah.
As the Palestinian Authority?
Nothing happens, it's not a very democratic entity.
I asked that because we put that to the ambassador last week, and we asked whether the Palestinian Authority, the government of Palestine, has any sort of support to Hamas.
Only half a year later.
And he said that the government of Palestine does not support Hamas. The government of Palestine has not supported what Hamas did on October the 7th last year. The government of Palestine does not support the continued holding of hostages, Israeli hostages, by Hamas.
Yeah. Have you seen any official condemnation of Hamas by the Palestinian Authority? Ask him to show us one. None. What happened is half a year later, when they realized the price, the toll on the Palestinian population, they started backing off. But show me one condemnation by the Palestinian Authority of Hamas. Listen to what the Palestinian envoys say here. And he was trying, it was kind of, I don't know, maybe sad, he was trying to move between we control the whole Palestinian community, both in Gaza and the West Bank, and at the same time, how did he put it? The non-obedient member of the family, with which he needs China. He said he needs to bring China to bring them together. This disobedient members of the family kill his own people in the West Bank, not in Gaza, in the West Bank these days, because they try to take over. Yeah, and he forgot many other things. You were talking about attempts to a settlement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give a big historical lecture. It's all documented. You can go back to the partition resolution, 1947. We accepted, and again, Israel accepted the partition resolution, Palestinian state, Jewish state. The Jewish state was without Jerusalem. Now, I'm talking to the people in Kenya. I don't need to tell you, the people of Kenya, what Jerusalem means to Jews, right? And Ben Gurion, the founding father, the first prime minister, accepted the partition resolution without Jerusalem. Jerusalem was not the capital, it was Tel Aviv. So it was then in 1947, and then through the different wars, and of course the culmination was in 2000, in July, in Camp David, when we offered initially 92% of the territory of the West Bank, then 95%, and 2008, 100%. But that was not good enough, because the issue is not this, it's the very existence of Israel. For them, it's difficult to swallow this thing called the Israeli state.
Does Israel, maybe I'll ask it a different way, does Israel recognize and acknowledge that the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian administration, is the legitimate administration,
of course,
in Palestine?
Yeah.
Does it also acknowledge that that administration and the political wing of Hamas are competitors in the politics of Palestine?
There's no political wing of Hamas. There's Hamas. Of course, they are competitors. They're enemies, not competitors.
Okay. So then one cannot be supporting the other if they are in opposition of each other.
I don't see them. Egypt has been trying for many years to bring them together to one room. Always failed.
Okay. So then it would not be correct to say that the Palestinian administration is supporting Hamas.
No. The Palestinian Authority saw this as an opportunity to push forward its agenda. Because once it was clear that we retaliate. Because, as one of our previous prime ministers, Golda Meir, said once, the Palestinians don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So they immediately jumped and embraced the attack and what followed. Of course, for political, they will try, for reasons, they try to be more delicate in the statements. What I'm saying is that if the Palestinian Authority would have come condemning Hamas, the leadership of the Hamas, that could have created an alternative for the Palestinians in Gaza. I'm not talking about the West Bank, the Palestinians in Gaza would have said, okay, there is an alternative. And then the ball would have rolled to our court, right? Okay, there's an agreement among the Palestinians, now let's see what the Israelis say. But it's not the case.
You've stated this morning, and you've actually challenged let the Palestinians show us one official statement condemning Hamas and the attack in Gaza. And what you're saying is, if there is nothing written, then we should take the inference here to be support. Then also, conversely, if there is nothing written, is there anything written by the Palestinian Authority supporting Hamas or praising the attack?
I can't quote. It's the general politics that the Palestinian Authority led. And it's a part of a bigger picture. The Palestinians, Iran, Turkey, which joined. So, and quite a few Arab countries, although many in the Arab world, like the Gulf states, stood against. So if you want to understand what I mean when I say condemnation, or at least a very clear statement, look at UAE. UAE came, and Bahrain as well, came during the first week with a very clear statement against that. So this is the way to go. It's not, the usual politics you try to say and then you say the opposite, like we saw here in your studio 2 weeks ago. We are against the Hamas, but we are with the Hamas. Trying to play. You have to be, with terrorism, you have to be straightforward, not trying to play with the words.
Our guest this morning is His Excellency Ambassador Michael Lotem, the Israeli ambassador to Kenya. We're getting into October soon. It'll soon be October 7th. Since the Hamas militants invaded Israel, there has been some ongoing and escalation of hostilities in that region. How many hostages are still being held, Ambassador?
101.
101.
Live and dead.
101.
Yes.
Live and dead. How many confirmed dead so far?
We don't know exactly, but more than 40.
Okay. So 101 hostages still being held. Removal of Hamas leadership is one of the conditions that the Israeli government has said, remove the Hamas leadership and we can cease fire. Enable 80,000 Israelis to go back home. Those are being held up in the north. Let them return to their homes. These are the conditions for ceasefire. As we approach October, then October 7th, as we look back at that day when Hamas militants crossed over into Israel, went into Israeli settlements and homes, blatantly shooting people, killing many, maiming many, and taking away many hostages. 101 of them are still in captivity. Some dead, some alive. 40 have been confirmed dead. Now, something happened at the United Nations in New York on Wednesday, and there was a resolution that was calling for Israel to withdraw from the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. And among other things, the resolution is calling on Israel to pay reparations to Palestinians for the damage caused by its occupation and urges countries to take steps to prevent trade or investment that maintains Israel's presence in the territories. It got 124 countries supported that resolution, 43 countries that voted against the resolution. Some countries, including Kenya, Ethiopia, Canada, the DRC, Congo, Rwanda, and South Sudan, were among those that abstained from this.
Malawi voted with us.
Malawi voted against the resolution. Uganda, Tanzania, Djibouti, Burundi, Mauritius voted for the resolution. There's a growing sentiment in the world, if you look at this, that maybe it's about time that we had a cessation of hostilities in this region.
You know what? There's also a growing sentiment in Israel that we should get to a peace in our region.
Mm-hmm.
So there's consensus on this one.
Okay.
We had enough.
Is there pressure? Is the government of Israel feeling the pressure then to actually halt its current activities in Hamas?
What we try, the aims of the war, I stated them before. Mm-hmm. So they are clear. All our previous attempts to come to an agreement, starting from the Oslo Accords, 1993, and then the withdrawal the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza, the evacuation of all the major cities. Bethlehem, the Nativity Church, is 2 kilometers from my apartment in Jerusalem. You can go to visit it. I can't enter. People don't know it. I can't enter Jericho. I can't. I was in Jericho when I was a child. Okay? So this is under Palestinian control. So we left. As I said, we withdrew from Lebanon in 2000. You do a mistake, you do something and you get the reaction that you get. That's once, second, third. And then, eventually we learn. So we wait and we demand to see a radical change in the thinking and the behavior of the Palestinians and those activated by Iran. And that's a challenge.
Okay.
Iran has its own agenda. Iran doesn't care about what the UN says or the UN doesn't say. And Iran is pushing. And the Houthis are pushing. And it's closer to your region as well. It's not a faraway thing in the middle of nowhere.
So in terms of the government of Israel, and seeing the UN passes a resolution by 124 members who say, get out of Palestinian territory. The International Court of Justice on July 19th says that the Israel's presence in the Palestinian territory is unlawful and cites various violations, including building and expanding settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, exploiting Palestinian resources like water, annexation of land, and discrimination against Palestinians. The ICJ, though its ruling was not binding, has said this is unlawful. What is the response of the government of Israel to the international community?
Do I have to explain to a Kenyan how politicized are these institutions, the ICJ and the ICC? Do I really have to remind you how politicized they are? And the UN, the UN in the 70s, in 80, passed a resolution that Zionism equals racism. A few years later, they reversed it. It's all about politics. So I'm relaxed.
So the response,
I'm relaxed.
The response of Israel is that you're just reading politics into this. A resolution by 124 countries.
But it is politics.
A resolution by 124 countries at the UN is nothing.
United Nations. Tell me, I think there are a few conflicts, a few disasters in Africa, in East Africa. Are you not upset that all these resolutions focus always on Israel? Are you not upset that the Palestinians basically hijack that your time, your African time, your East African? I mean, we don't talk about the conflicts in Africa. We don't talk about we sit here in UNEP, in Nairobi. And again, we discuss things that UNEP will never get to do. They can discuss and deal with what's happening here. But no, are you not upset with this?
Ambassador, the last time you were here, you were speaking in praise of what had happened at the UN, particularly the UN Security Council, and in fact even speaking glowingly about our then ambassador at the UN Council, Martin, who issued a statement that said this was absolutely wrong to see this kind of invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And said, you see, when the UN speaks like this is good for the global peace and harmony. Now, because the UN is voting against the activities of Israel, you read politics?
It just makes my point that it is politics. Look at the votings of other countries, some of them you mentioned, that reversed or changed their voting. Not because the reality has changed, because of political considerations.
So it's palatable if the politics make sense for you as a nation? The politics at the United Nations that you speak of, in one case, works for a nation, in another case, doesn't really?
Yeah, but I'm not getting too excited when I get the support, and I don't get too excited when I don't, because I know it's all politics. So,
Okay. Does it bear any weight on what Israel will or will not do with this resolution that has come from the United Nations?
No.
Okay. I remember just not too many months ago when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a speech at Unga, and he basically said that Israel would go it alone if they had to. Does that still remain the same position today?
Yeah.
It does?
It does. Nobody is there to replace us. Nobody, the UN, take the UN. You want to, let's discuss the UN. UNIFIL, the United Nations force in South Lebanon. There is a UN resolution 1701, which stipulates that the Hezbollah should withdraw north of a river called Litani and so on and so forth, away from the Israeli-Lebanese recognized border. And there's a UN force there. Doing what? Doing what? Nothing. Okay. We don't expect them to do something, and they don't do anything.
Allow me to ask a question this way. What does Israel benefit with its prolonged occupation in Gaza?
But again, we should know the details. We left Gaza in 2005, okay? Gaza is not the West Bank. It's about 100 kilometers away from the West Bank. We left Gaza in 2005. I mean, that's something that people don't want to understand, to digest. We were not there. Prime Minister Sharon took a lot of fire from his previous parties, from different politicians, because we had to evacuate forcefully Israelis from the Gaza Strip. Not from the main cities. We were never, from 1994, we are not in Khan Yunis in Gaza, but from the settlements. We uprooted. We took the dead. We unburied them. Okay, so it's not, your question, what we gained from occupation is, sorry to say it, misleading, because we are not occupying. This is what
yet, you don't want Hamas there.
And yet, I can't understand the connection. Why there is
because
a
you said you've left, which would almost mean
we left when the Palestinian Authority controlled Gaza. Palestinian Authority.
Okay.
2005.
There's still an issue. Israel still has an issue with Hamas in Gaza.
Correct.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the issue with Hamas being in Gaza if Israel, as you say, has left 2005? We don't have any issues there.
So we go to the basics.
Still have a problem with Hamas being in Gaza.
We have no.
It was one of the conditions you gave for a ceasefire to happen.
No.
It's one of the issues that you gave for a ceasefire to take place.
Let me put it again. The issue with the Hamas is that in the last 20 years, they've been shooting rockets and missiles into Israel. This is the issue with the Hamas, not the fact that they controlled. And it was mentioned by the Palestinian here, it's mentioned by many in Israel, that we allowed a lot of money and construction material to go into Gaza. Why? We thought they will build something for the benefit of the population there. So the issue is not that the Hamas was in Gaza. The issue was that the Hamas fired continuously into Israel. That was the issue. Can you imagine any of the terrorist organizations, you have a few around you, shooting for the, continuously for years.
For sport.
2 decades. Just shooting. Do you get used to it? You get used to it. You don't want to get used to it. Our mistake was that we got used to it. We said, now, okay, it's, these few agricultural towns and villages.
Yeah,
it's not Tel Aviv. And many in the north are very upset. These 80,000 people, saying, we retaliate only when Tel Aviv is bombed. What about us? 80,000 people. I can't access 20 kilometers from the border with Lebanon. I cannot access. So this is the issue with the Hamas. Not the fact that they were in Gaza. The fact that they read the Hamas. Last time I brought here, if you remember, the Hamas Covenant. And I read out. The issue is not Gaza. The issue is the existence of Israel, and they state it very clearly. But we are, we are nice people, so we think this is only blah, blah, blah. They don't mean it. They mean it.
So there is a connection between Hamas and the Hezbollah, and you've mentioned it here also, other states who are supporting them.
I mentioned Iran.
Right, Iran.
Yemen.
So what is Israel doing to gather the support of the international community, so then the international community can work together towards saying, we want to move towards lasting peace? And so these organizations that are a threat to peace and security in Israel, that are also maybe a threat to stability in Palestine, because the ambassador was here for Palestine and said Hamas and its activities continue destabilizing the economy and peace and security in Palestine itself. So is there any action that has been taken by Israel to bring together the international community to rally towards elimination of or at least de-escalation of the hostilities by Hamas, by Hezbollah, and by such other states, as you say, Israel and Yemen and the others?
We tried, and the last big attempt was in 2008 by Prime Minister Olmert, who offered, as I said, 100% of the territory of the West Bank. 100%. He didn't offer Gaza because the Gaza was already in Palestinian hands. So, I tell you what I said, I guess, before. In the Middle East, if I go and buy something in the bazaar, if I get 20% off, it's nice. 50% is very nice. But in this case, it's 100%. And that was not good enough. So then you have to, to think, is there maybe another agenda? Maybe we're talking about the wrong thing. Maybe there is a hidden agenda. If they refused that.
Are there talks today? Because if we want to look at all of this from a solely humanitarian point of view, the number of deaths that have taken place in the 1 year cannot be blamed on one side only. Both sides are responsible for deaths that took place. Both sides are responsible for the destruction that took place. From a humanitarian point of view, in terms of what is happening across this belt, the calls from the world is that it needs to stop. The question is, who's going to be the one who's going to be ready to sit at the table and say, let us duke this out at the table and make sure that the humanitarian crisis does not deepen further than it already is?
Sorry, but I cannot agree with you on your initial statement. The destruction, the suffering of the people of Gaza was brought not by Israel. We didn't launch the war. We didn't initiate it. We retaliated.
Retaliation causes destruction.
Retaliation?
Whichever way you look at it.
Of course, but this is something that, as I said, could have been stopped in every given minute. Now, I can of course, give you numbers of other wars in the last 20 years where war took place inside cities. The number of deaths was in the hundreds of thousands. I don't want to bring the names here, but you can understand what I'm talking about, I'm sure. So we do it as accurate as possible. So when we called for the evacuation of people, the international community said, why do you evacuate people? Politics. When we don't and they are hit, then why you hit? Why are they being hit? So whatever we do, not good enough.
I can understand where you're coming from, but I'd really like you to look at this from this angle, that you cannot justify, again, death. And I'm looking at this not in a political manner, but I'm looking at this at a humanitarian level. And to say that we cannot justify death from a reason of retaliation. And so my question is...
You're wrong. Legally speaking, you're wrong.
Whether it is initiation or whether it is retaliation, the end result is that there's self-defense. Allow me to ask the question, that at the end of the day, the result, whether it is initiation or retaliation, there is loss of life, there is destruction. So will there be a time, whether it is the proponents of retaliation or the proponents of initiation, will be able to say, okay, let us look at this thing and say, how can we actually bring it to an end?
Excellent. I'll give you two answers. One, self-defense is a basic right of every individual, every country. So when you defend yourself, sometimes someone is killed. As individuals in any society, Kenya included, and in any other place. And I'll give you also the macro. Lebanon. Why haven't I heard anybody, including no one in Africa, not the African Union, in the last almost a year, from October the 8th, Hezbollah has been attacking Israel. Nobody says anything, right? And we are waiting, and there are voices in Israel invade Lebanon. But this is exactly what you were asking. So we restrain ourselves. What use does it? Did it help anybody in Israel? Did it help these 80,000 people in the north? Not at all. So the mentality is different. I know business-wise, let me open brackets. Business-wise, I see people from Israel coming here to do business. Sometimes I look at the two sides and I think that they live on different planets. And the same, when I hear, in many cases, a European talking about the conflict in the Middle East. Just be more nice. In one culture, being nice is appreciated. In another culture, being nice is a show of weakness. And if we don't want to be, and I don't want to be arrogant enough to think that what I think, everybody thinks, because you suffer here in Africa from this, we suffer from it in Israel. Some big guys think that if they think so, everybody should think so. Well, in real life, it doesn't happen so.
So what would be the condition, apart from the three that you mentioned, to look at a situation of a ceasefire to quell the humanitarian crisis that is currently being experienced?
Isn't it good enough? The three that I mentioned, two of them are relevant, two of the conditions are relevant to Gaza, not the third. Yeah? And I just heard this morning, an American senior official was very upset from the dynamic that we all know, we all read about it, and I see it here also, unfortunately, in the UN, in the discussions. Palestinians come with a demand. Once the demand is answered, they go back. Now what happens usually, and I'll tell you in the secret because no one listens, is that you say, okay, maybe I go one step backward and that will appease them. Because I show I'm a nice guy. No, it doesn't work. Some cultures it works. In some cultures telling a lie is something terrible, right?
It's abhorrent, yes.
In another, it's something that it's okay. Nothing happened. And you see it everywhere. We read about it. We read, the whole list, take the documents of July 2000 in Camp David, how they went back. Each time there was a demand, we accepted the demand, the Palestinians withdrew. And we see it, you mentioned the UN, I see it happening here. So sometimes you have to speak softly and carry a big stick, as Roosevelt said.
Yeah. Ambassador, on this 7th of October, when, the dust had settled, so to speak, it was clear that over 1,000 Israelis had been killed. Some were found at a concert, they were killed there. Some were found in their own homes, peacefully, they were killed there. Children were killed. It was painful to see that in the news. Some were dragged out of their homes, out of that concert, out of the streets, and they were taken away as hostages. Since then, many have died in captivity. This is on the side of Israel. Look at the other side as well, in the Gaza Strip. There were innocent children, women, men, waking up, to go on with their daily lives, to open their shop, to go to school, and they have died. Yeah. Their homes have been destroyed. Their schools have been destroyed. Many of them have been forced to find a way to move out of this Gaza Strip, and they don't know what they'll come back to. These are human beings that are affected in this conflict. Now, as a government that knows the pain of losing human beings, what does Israel think needs to happen so that this stops, so that not one more Israeli, not one more Palestinian dies?
What we need to do is exactly what we've been trying to do in the last many months, to come to some kind of an agreement that will remove the leadership of the Hamas from its place. Some of them were removed by other means, and to release the hostages.
Does Israel regret the deaths of tens of thousands of Palestinians?
We regret the death of every innocent person. Very simple. When I watch on news and I see, I don't feel happy. The one who went out celebrating on the rooftops in Ramallah, those 75% Palestinians in the West Bank, coming back to what you asked before, 75% by a survey done by the Palestinians supported Hamas. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they were celebrating. Have you seen any celebrations in Israel? I saw demonstrations in Israel against, to release the hostages, to stop. We don't celebrate when our enemies die. And, there is this 45 minutes very graphic videos taken by the Hamas, more than 45, but we cut it, and they took the videos with the GoPro when they slaughtered, beheaded. And you see some of the videos taken in Gaza, and you see all these supposedly innocent people in Gaza celebrating, hitting dead bodies. So the reality is a bit more complicated than bad guys, good guys in Gaza. Hamas was voted for, supported by so many in Gaza. There is a need for a change of mindset in the population of Gaza.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you come back soon, and at least we get some more updates of what's happening in this region, hoping that next time it'll be talking about peace and now the implementation of a peace accord.
And maybe we can dedicate next time some minutes to speak about what Israel does with Kenya positively on the bilateral, because our bilateral with Kenya is not the Palestinians.
That's true. Kenya and Israel enjoy some cordial diplomatic relations, and that's why you're here. Ambassador Michael Lotem is the Israeli ambassador to Kenya. He's been our guest for this hour as we head towards October. What's happening in that region?
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.